The Welsh word for bull is taru, and the Cornish word is taro, T-A-R-O. Basically the tarot. It said Lateo on the Marseille tarot deck, and you would think it's French because it's the Marseille deck. It's not. That's tower in Italian. You have tower or tor, which is going to be a bull, and tower. I think we may be looking at an ancient empire, leaving its symbolism behind.
You might even make a letter swap T to D and R to an N, and now you've got Dawn, the Lord.
What is going on? We stumbled on this. We kicked a beehive.
It's a gravy portal. Even the Latin word for letters is one letter off for the Latin word for secret. Lateo, secret.
Yup. Church of
Latter-day Saints.
Yeah, even think about that. That's definitely encoding that. Oh my God, I never thought of that. That's freaky. The Priestess card. We've got some gravy. I've never seen anybody explain that this is where the symbolism is coming from.
Inner World Podcast, Episode 3. We got an exciting one for you. We are going to be into the piping hot, fresh gravy with the excitement of new discovery. Dylan has a lot of spiraling genius connections that he's made, connected old dots to new dots with some of the ideas that came out in the previous episode. It's going to be a really fun one. I like the title you already came up with, The Lord's Tower. Super excited. Before we get into it, I just want to tell you, man, I had a client today for tuning that he's gone through all of your books and also he's read them. Some of them, he said that he's read the first Spirit World book 8 times and he's listened to the audiobooks and, he's doing the work and following the wherever it takes him and the natural law of it all. And really awesome guy. And we had a great tuning session. So you know who you are out there. Shout out to you. And just thought that was cool. I love how our worlds converge. I think he even found my channel because of following your work originally. And that's just cool. It makes me happy to know that there are, even if we don't have contact with all of them, there are people out there that are really getting something out of what you're doing, and our collaborations is pretty sweet.
I'm very excited about the possibility of this work catching on and people in different walks of life being able to bring things forward that we never had access to. That is some of the things that I dream about, because I know my goal is for some of this to lead to significant discoveries in the real world. And, I was talking about that with our buddy Pat the other day, and I think I'm going to write a screenplay, a story about this, and make it about this, what maybe not necessarily historical, but follow that timeline to this empire, kind of make it like a film like Gladiator. And I think it's really exciting that just thinking about somebody discovering something in a foreign location or in Italy or whatever, and they thought it was Roman or whatever. And imagine if they found something and realized it was Troy, because, he also was like, I loved that idea that always stuck with me, the possibility that Rome was Troy. And that's what's been built upon or just straight up covered up. And just because of the sevenfold city and the labyrinth or the great sewers underneath it that look like they could be a labyrinth. So I love that. I love hearing that. And hopefully, if he ever makes discoveries or contributes in his own life, he'll bring it forward and maybe you can have him on as a guest or whatever. It's exciting.
So, buddy, you want to introduce the topic for us? This is pretty much your research.
Feel free to, you can rename it. I just threw that name on it because I was like, we need something that correlates to lore, etc.
And Lord's Tower is a sweet name. Completely epic.
Cool. And so in the previous episode, we had broached the subject. I think we kind of had an epiphany and just a slight correction to make, but it still is the same. You had brought, I'd seen in your notes that I thought it was French because it said Lateo on the Marseille tarot deck. And you would think it's French because it's the Marseille deck. And it's not. That's tower in Italian. But I had just done, I'd been narrating the audio-visual version of this guy right here. And there's a part where I'm talking about, I think it's pronounced toi, in France, it's spelled Tours, Tours, but that means tower in French. And we had broached the subject about how there are accounts in the historical record that the Turanians are named after terces or towers because they built towers. And this is, I don't know if you can see that, but that's formerly, high. They would build in high locations like that. And that's why they were so strong in a sense of like being able to defend themselves, because they build their towns on like really difficult to attack positions in Italy. And
that Tyrrhenians are the Italians on the Tyrrhenian Sea. It's right there. Also, that was another name for the Pelagi. So it's Phoenician, Pelagi, Tyrrhenians. These seem to be, and based on your work, we're putting forward that also Etruscans, the Celts, Gauls, they're all one people with different names and different languages and regions.
And speaking of which, we're going to dive into some Celtic. I've been studying the Cornish. And if you want to bring up that first image of Jesu or Jesu, one of the things that's really interesting about this universal empire and this universal system is oftentimes cultures, they use Latin letters to signify letters in another language. You especially see this prevalent in Eastern European languages. You'll see like Greek letters mixed with English letters in their language when they write it, and it looks like a hybrid of like Latin and Greek. It's really interesting. But what you are seeing here is you should be able to click the images if you don't want letters, like they could bring them up or whatever for all of the images. But that we've talked about this a lot, how that is IH. Well, in this case, they leave out the S, they omit it. It's basically like an upsilon. Now, I don't know off the top of my head if that's their way of using S. It could be, but it looks like an inversion of the H to signify upsilon, because maybe that's what they had available to them. I have no idea. This isn't a historical inscription. It's from a 17th century text or 18th century text. But what you would look at is you see the I, which is the iota function. There was no J back in the day. So we all know what that is. That's going to be the same in all of the languages pretty much. But that H is actually serving the function as a Greek eta. And then you have that upsilon, which is, I think it functions as an S in this case, because it's basically just IHS. You can get out of that. I just wanted to show people like what you're dealing with in some of these Cornish languages. You can see there is a Greek influence. Now, if you want to go to that next slide, the reason I want to start here is because when you're dealing with these solar archetypes, you have this affinity that we've gone over, which is boule, meaning the council, bull, and all of these archetypes have horns, which we'll get into. It's actually called hornism. You have tower or Thor, which is going to be Horus, right? The bull. And then you have tower. You have Tours in France, Tours, which is Tours, that city, which is Etruscanized. There's tons of artifacts all over France, but especially in those areas. And I think we may be looking at the imprints of an ancient empire, leaving its symbolism behind, then getting adopted. And all this stuff is going to be modern that we're looking at today. It's not like any of this is going to be coming from the ancient world, but you can see the continuity in it. And so
you might even make a letter swap jump to T to D and that R to an N. And now you've got Dawn, the Lord, as well.
Perfect. Absolutely perfect. And I was looking at this even in the word tomb. If you just do that interchange between the W and the M, you have Tau. The root would be T-O-W instead of T-O-M, like you see with Sanskrit and Latin. So this, and the other thing is that like these, oftentimes they have sepulchral towers. They'll build towers over dead people. They call them victory towers. There's a bunch of names from them, but you'll see this from India to Ireland, and everywhere in between, or maybe from Ireland to, who knows which way it's coming from, maybe from Italy and out. That's not really the conversation that I'm here to like demonstrate. But that IEU that you see in Jesu or in Cornish, it's IEU. That is the first three letters of Jehovah. That's where Jew comes from. And that's Jesus. So you're literally seeing that IEU in Cornish is Jesus. The Jesuits, they, for whatever reason, I think it's to kind of encode things, they leave that eta as it is rather than writing an E. But even like when you see it, the cross springing up out of that, you see on the side, it looks like an E. So it's kind of like an artistic way of hiding it. But for the audience, for those of you who have read Spirit World and listened to our shows, that's the monogram of Bacchus. And that's what a lot of people don't realize is that that name of Jesus it comes from the monogram of Bacchus. And if you look at the hash marks, what you'll see is the one that's between the two upright eyes, if you will, that make the H. That's going to be the winter solstice. The middle hash would be the equinox, and the northern hash would be the summer solstice. So that is the thrice-great nature of the sun.
Maybe it's actually the other way around, like the long gap between hashes being the longer daylight of the summer solstice.
Yeah, that very well could be it too.
Mm-hmm. And then the other way around, the space between the top two being the short days of the winter. Yeah,
you see that. You see that in a lot of times when you look at the astrological charts, you'll see that the north is down and the southern is at the top, and then the east is on the left and the west is on the right. So that wouldn't surprise me at all if that's the case. And again, a symbol is just based on whoever made it decides what it means, right? Like there's a correlation, but that is thrice-great. That's why Hermes or Hermes is thrice-great. There's nothing else that's thrice-great like that. And if it wasn't recognizable, it's right there in the middle of a sun. I don't know how anybody could dispute that. So when I deal with this symbolism, I'm not dealing with anybody's modern interpretation of it. You'll see under that in the next slide, if you want to go to that, it says King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. That's Bacchus. That's Jew. That's Jesus. That's Jehovah. That's Jupiter, God, the Father. That's Yao, Iota, Omega, Iota, Alpha, Omega, right? I'm the Alpha and Omega. Jesus admits that. That's what he is. And
which makes him Abraxas.
Exactly. And everywhere, for those who've never heard of Abraxas, when you see these archetypes inscribed in tombs and such, they're like these serpentine deities with sometimes he's depicted with a chicken head. Sometimes he's not. Sometimes he's just depicted like Jesus, but with like a Phrygian cap on him. We'll get to that significance. But if you want to go to the next slide with the gentleman, I think that's Saint, I forget which saint that is. I think it might be Saint Clement. But what you'll see in that, if you zoom in on that sun, I don't know if you have the ability or not. It's okay if you don't. But that, you're looking at Greek and Latin letters in that. And so most people can't read that because they're only aware of one. Like everybody who speaks English is aware of that S. People who only are aware of Greek might not recognize that that's an S, right? So they might be able to recognize the first letter, but not the last one. So it really does lend itself to people being at a certain level of education who can read this. And so what you'll see is UHS, but that U is a Latinized upsilon, which is in that context functions like HU, like hue. So you have God, and then that HS functions like ES, which is Esh, the fire. God, the fire. That's the sun. Leaves no dispute.
And we are made in his image. Thus, we are hue.
Exactly. So where are we? When you want, we'll take us to the members only section. I can keep going, but I just wanted to, that's what I wanted to establish because all of this is tying into the Lord and we're going to get busy with all these female archetypes. I think it would be cool. Your audience will really I've never seen you broach the subject, but the people who are into the tarot, we've got some gravy, or I definitely have. I've never seen anybody explain that this is where the symbolism is coming from with the sorceress, not the sorceress, the priestess card. So next we have Tanit, which is a Phoenician archetype. And that's seen mostly in Sicily and Carthage. And given that the words for tower, Taurus, Turanians, all that stuff share the same root, it looks like we might be dealing with that crown of fortresses also known as the Mural crown. And so just as a reminder for those popping on the other side, my audience is very familiar with this because they've been fully versed in it. But again, terces means tower. That's what they believe these ancient Italians were named after. And that's what the Greeks called them. It's not what they called themselves. But those crowns everybody has seen them. If you want to start pulling up those images, that's what the basis of the, like that stereotypical crown in heraldry, that one that looks like like a rampart of a tower, the top part of it. And what's interesting is you see all these archetypes, such as Aphrodite, Hecate, who is Fortuna, Rhea, all of them wearing this crown, this corona, if you will. And they are the female counterparts of Kronos. And you made a really good sync last week. If you want to go over that for the audience again about Grane and Granus and why that, if you want, we can just refresh everybody's mind.
Oh, well, this is such a huge connection to have in your pocket. Looking at words that refer to grain or corn, that the Keren, QRN or Kaf Resh Nun, that means corn or horn or radiance. It's the abundance, the life-giving generative property of the sun, the cornucopia, right? Here you see whichever one of these goddesses it is, Rhea maybe, or Kybel, all of them are shown with this symbolism. Virgo with the spike of wheat, that grains and wheats are an essential part of sustaining life. And so in their role as the, creator, preserver, destroyer, these aspects of the god, they often have this corn or grain associated with it because, well, it's kind of like that old priestly punning that's constantly going on. And it's a way, I don't know, maybe of concealing the sameness between the system in one region or another, or it just happens naturally. But when you know that we're looking at grain and we're looking at corn and we're looking at horns, I mean, there's like a crown has kind of a horn-like property to it. And it's also the horns that the sun makes in its rays. There's like spikes of grain, spikes of life, spikes of light. And there's the thing that we made the connection to last week that was so interesting. I came upon this because of looking into Dagon, who's the Phoenician father of the gods, according to the Sanchuniathon, and Philo of Byblos. And Philo of Byblos says, Byblos is, by the way, the capital of Phoenicia. He says that Dagon comes from a word that means grain. And I thought, oh, wow, now it makes sense. It's the same thing as the corn, it's grain. And then it clicked into my head that this other epithet of Apollo that's found in some places, Granus, is with the G to K swap. That's Kronos. That's the father of the gods again. It's a huge.
That is one of the biggest ones you've ever made. Like for me, that is like up there. That is like top. That's like Michael Jordan level.
Just right under our nose the whole time is the funny part. That's the thing why we want you guys to pick up these keys too, because you can tread over the same puzzle pieces in a big, 10,000 piece puzzle over and over again. And the one you're looking for, you keep looking right over it and don't notice. And that's just part of the nature of things that are sort of this complexified. But the mainstream will say Granus means something about a beard or something, which is hilarious. It's obviously Kronos. And I actually was doing some research on what there is to know about, the system in Germany and surrounding areas for an upcoming Universe episode. And I came across this astrotheological Euheremismed character from German history, Barbarossa, whose name is basically Bel Isi. If you allow the philology of that, he's said to be waiting.
Explain that to people. Isi, it's going to be related to Savior, Yasha, and Bel would be Lord, Bull, Baal, all that stuff. So it's like God the Savior.
Yeah, exactly. And he's said to be waiting underground or in a cave or something for he's wounded or partially dead, but when he resurrects, Germany will rise again. Anyway, it's all like a Fisher King classic element of an Osirian archetype. But the mainstream says that his name means red beard. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, no, that's Baal Isi. It's the It's the same system, but they really like to call it a beard for some reason. It's a cover story. That's why it covers the face of things.
Yeah, that's funny, but kind of not funny because it does seem like that's what they're doing. And for those who wanted to look up Granus, you'll see it in the Celtic words, Gran. So like in Irish, there's a word, it transliterates as CNOC. So I think the Scottish pronounce it knock because that C functions like a G. So remember how we talked about the gnosis, the GN or the CN knock? But the Irish, for those who don't know what Celtic letters look like, the R and the N look very similar. And that might be one of the reasons why the transposition errors in the accidental transposition happens is because of that. But they say Cracgrania, which is the hill of the sun. So there's literally no confusion about what grano or granus or grania means in the Celtic world. And that's why I was so compelled to do this book, is because our history is Celtic. And if you're European and you go far enough back, your history is Celtic. And they've divided us because of the modern systems that have kind of taken over and become these worldwide conglomerate melting pots. But in the old days, it wasn't like that. That's why I think it's valuable for you if you want to know, your people's history. This stuff will help you. But what you said about that savior and the Isi, the reason this work is so important is because I'm not competent when it comes to these Celtic languages. I have a hard enough time, learning all these other ones. So like it's not like I'm an expert, but there's people in Britain, there's people in northwestern France that are going to have access to these languages. There's people in the Bay of Biscay. They're going to be able to look at this stuff through a different lens. And we've already found Etruscan words in the Basque language. And there's also Etruscan words in the Cornish language. And the modern Etruscologists don't know what some of these ancient Italian words mean. But when I learn, and we're going to see this later in our podcast, I'm not going to give it away, but I learned a word that meant savior in Cornish is actually the name of an archetype in Etruria. And you'll see that inscribed on a caduceus.
Wow.
So you see the savior archetypes with this triune tool, that psychopomp tool that gets then either turned into the trident.
It's the brazen serpent of Moses, the serpent on a pole.
It's all of them. So we'll get there. I don't want to give it away yet, but it's crazy. And
were you just mentioning knock? What was that again?
So if you look it up, you have in Celtic, it's if you have they use it in both Scottish and Irish. It's CNOC or C, but the Irish say CROC. It means hill. So if you just look up like Scottish word for hill, there's actually a famous Scotch, I think, called Anach that people in your audience might know because I know you have some Scottish listeners.
Well, it's anecdotal, maybe not connected, but there's potentially a relationship because we know that like the hill and the Kel and that's about the way that these groups gathered. It was very important, stone circles and hills. But there's one of the daughters of Chaos, the Greek goddess of the night, often called Nox or Nyx in English transliteration. That's spelled in ancient Greek, Nu, Omicron, He, but it's the old He, the old X, the one that looks weird, not the modern usage, or Chi. But that has in the ancient Greek, the way it's spelled, it actually has a gematria value of 510, which is the value of the Resh or the sun in Hebrew gematria. So there's possibly a connection there too with Nok and the Greek goddess of the night or the daughter of chaos.
And there's a connection there with Ares, the hill of Mars, or Ares, which is the sun in Egypt, or that archetype Ares, the god of war in Greek. That's where Areopagus comes from, the hill of Ares. But they're not talking about Mars, the planet. They're talking about Mars, the sun that kills everything in winter. The god Maud. Yeah, exactly. Phoenician Maud, Lord. Yep. Yeah. So this all is like when you just had that one just literally that one conversation about the Thor and the bulls and all that stuff, and a turret, the tower with the guns. A turret. Then you also have torrential. Man, this is like it reminds me of what you were saying. How on our last episode, everything circles back. Remember that? And so one of the other things that you'll see, towers are usually a component of forts, which in Latin, fortis, that's where fort comes from. It means strong or brave. And if you would, I would like you to show both family shields. You have to click on them individually. We'll do them one at a time. But this is my Venetian family. They're from like outside of Venice, like Ferrara. And so you see like at the top is that palmette, which is going to be similar to it's like the precursor to the fleur-de-lis. And you'll see that.
Looks like the leaf of a palm tree, which is the phoenix tree, incredibly important to the system.
Exactly. And then if you want to go to the next one, well, they have the fleur-de-lis and St. Andrew's cross on it. And the reason I wanted to bring this up is because I've shown that there are artifacts in Etruria. Sorry, artifacts.
Yeah, the Boston really came out there.
Sometimes it's really hard, dude. You don't realize how hard I try to talk normally on these fucking things, but you know me. It's like, so you have the fleur-de-lis and the St. Andrew's cross. And even at the top, there's another little like kind of fleur-de-lis design. And you'll see this on the heads of the phoenix, which we'll get into. But that, again, this is all what I suspect is going to be the imprints. Regardless of what you think that emblem means and what it's related to, it is the footprints. It is the fingerprints of an ancient system. And what we see of it today, it's just because our ancestors are from this. We've grown up traditionally in Europe using these symbols. And so even like things like bagpipes, the bagpipes before any early like Scotland inscriptions or anything, Scottish, I should say, that was what the Calabrian shepherds brought to Rome at the winter solstice. They played the bagpipes. So even the bagpipe might be from Italy. This is going back in pre-Common Era, these festivals.
And stylistically, at least, that has a real big resonance to India with just the drone sound. As the sitar and other instruments, like that's a popular sound palette for both of those places, even though they're so far apart.
They have bagpipes in India too, because I think it was actually one of your listeners that brought that up. I remember we were doing a podcast one time and someone in the comment section mentioned the fact that the Indians had bagpipes because I looked into it. They do. They have, and it's like made from like, you know how like they make them from like an animal organ or something like that. It's like a cow heart or some weird like skinned and dried out or whatever. And they make it into this thing, they push it. And so again, this was some of the stuff that started me out on this quest of asking the questions. Where is it coming from? Why do these places all have these like three, like it almost seems like these parts in India, Italy, and Scotland are what are now Washington, D.C., London, and Rome. You know what I mean? And the reason it matters for the language, for the people who don't know this, is the Scottish, Highland, and like Irish languages, they're observably from Punic, which is Sicilian, the Phoenician that comes from specifically Sicily. And it's seen in Malta, Carthage, etc. But I suspect that Phoenician is coming from Etruria. And that's what people are mixing up. And the reason they're mixing it up is because they've been taught, and we've been taught, so we were mixing it up too, is that these hieroglyphics preceded the letters. And so we're sitting here trying to figure out how this is all coming from Egypt and elsewhere in the Middle East and that North Africa, like the Asiatic part of the world. And if you just tweak the possibility that our letters are actually coming from Italy, which is why the Latins use them and why we all use Latin letters, and it's not coming from those other places, then everything becomes so much easier to explain how these connections are being made. But let's jump now to the next section, which is
about what you just said. Not much, but there is a lot of drumming into people's heads that study history or language that the hieroglyphic style or the pictograph style precedes letters. Yet there's no real like artifact evidence to back that up other than things like the Rosetta Stones, which have plenty of problems with them. My point being, what sounds more likely to you? Like
you and me, imagine doing like a deal where we're trying to like broker like a trade and we got to write these fucking pictures.
You know, let me just say about the hieroglyphics too, the way that they're translated by Champollion is basically, and Higgins does a really good job describing all the flaws with this, but it's pretty much contrived to make anything mean anything. And so, who knows? It's a coin toss. But in terms of what feels more likely to me, that I think what happened, and I think you've said this before, that the secret of letters and writing was originally a priestly secret, but over time got out of the bag to a degree. Maybe not to everybody, but like to more wealthy or learned or noble or aristocrat types that weren't part of the fraternities or loyal to them. And in that represented a threat to the hegemony of power that the priesthood had. And so the creation of the hieroglyphics makes more sense to me as the next level of ciphering or encoding to, like how could you, I just don't understand how you could translate the hieroglyphics in a way that is phonetic if they weren't originally created on the foundation of a phonetic system. Like that makes no fucking sense.
Chance, when you look at them translate, I posted this in a recent article. I didn't include it today because I didn't think we were going to get on this subject. But when you look at like the name of Ptolemy and Alexander, right? And each symbol corresponds to a Greek letter or a Latin letter. So it's
right. So they're telling us
that wasn't the foundation.
They're telling us that came first, yet it correlates to letters that came later. That makes no sense.
When you pull this apart, dude, you realize, man, none of this stuff is common sense. It's only when you actually look at it and you want to get to the bottom of it that you realize this is actually like trying to investigate two little kids who ate all the cookies and they're both covered with chocolate and cookie crumbs. And they're like, I didn't do it. I don't know nothing, and you're just like, really? I swear I would never lie to you. You know what I mean? It's like, you're like, you realize I'm not fucking idiot. I'm not an idiot, right? Like, come on. At what point do you just give it up? But like, they're just going to ride it out. They're going to ride it out for like, you could prove all of these people in a court of law lied and they still won't admit it. Like, you just can't. There's no way to come clean about this system. I've thought long and hard about it. No one's ever going to come clean about it. It's just got to be one of those things where everybody else's knowledge gets to a level where we can laugh them out of the room when they pretend they're not lying. We can just make fun of them. And that mockery and sense of humor is what's going to allow people to ease into this acceptance rather than getting violent,
Amen.
And who knows, maybe we're wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. And I'm like an example of the Dunning-Kruger effect in this regard right now. So I'm not going to make the claim for sure that the hieroglyphics are after the letters, but in my opinion, they are. And that's what I'll say for now. I could be wrong. Chance could be wrong. We're just doing our best to get to the bottom of what we've been told. And a lot of it has not been making sense.
Yep. I resonate with all that. Yeah.
I'll be the first to admit, oh, there you go. Look at that. So that's Hecate Triformis, which is three form, right? So again, it's that other Thrice-Great. And we've talked about how a lot of these archetypes, that Queen of Heaven archetype she'll correspond to the two feminine zodiac signs, or maybe I guess if you want to include Libra in that, it could be three, but the feminine signs, but also the moon and also Venus. And you'll look at this when we touch upon Davidet, or some people call Taurt, which has the Thor in it, meaning bull. And it's important to realize that bull doesn't necessarily mean cow. Bull can mean anything, like bull, the male of the elk, like other animals are called bulls too. And this archetypes, a lot of them have a thrice triune nature about them. And so,
Hecate has a relation to Apollo again in the epithet given to Apollo as Hekarios or Hekargos. Just a, possibility.
That sounds like IE followed by ark. That literally sounds like God of the ark. Yeah. I didn't know about that. I've never seen that one.
Yeah, the epithets really drive the point home. And they demonstrate, it's so funny, like what gets picked and chosen as established as an epithet of a god versus created a whole new god with that name. But I think that the big variety of gods and goddesses is largely coming from misunderstanding epithets and titles for the same thing, and maybe intentionally so.
Yeah, I can
and coming up with new names out of the epithets and titles.
I see that, because if you're going to redress this up all over the world, that's just bound to happen. I mean, it happens with language. Why wouldn't it happen with everything else? And so I think the tops, I don't think those are crowns, right? I think those look like the tops of the vases, right? So it's kind of like that water jug, that Aquarian type of symbols. I'm not saying that means Aquarius. I'm just saying, like, when you see that water of life that kind of seeds the, females respond to, or they correspond to, I should say, water, and men correspond to the fire that seeds the fertile earth, if you will. But you'll see that on Diana. And the reason it pertains to this is when we get to it, which we're going to soon, you'll see it on the head of Tanit, which is the Phoenician archetype. And there's a lot of other stuff. But we had mentioned that, I believe, if we didn't, then I apologize, but I could have sworn I broached the subject where the Welsh word for bull is taru, Taru, and the Cornish word is taro, Taro. And that's where I was like, that's basically the tarot. And that may give insight in terms of warding off evil or bad luck, because when we get into hornism, we'll show you how that before it was perverted, it was a sign of protection and warding off evil spirits and bad luck. But Toro or Taro or Taro, you have also the law, Torah, and the French word for tower, Tua. And so the point that I wanted to really drive home with this episode is you have the Tur, Tur, you have Tor, Tor, you have Tur, Tyr, you have, which is the capital of Phoenicia, allegedly. You have Tir, you have Tar, all the vowels, I should say, and Ter, right?
And you have Termes, the Termes, that's Hermes to the Etruscans. You have Thor, which is the same as Tor.
I mean, please elaborate, but this interchange between the letters is significant because you have the earth goddess Tara, the earth deity, but then you have Tellus in Latin and Phoenician. So in Carthage, you'll see it's Tellus. So that's where Terra, you have Terra, but that R to L interchange is Tellus in the Latin languages and the Latin cultures. So that's something else to be mindful of. And
so you're telling me that everybody's hypnotized by Terra Vision?
Oh my God, Terra Vision, Tellus Vision, yes.
That's
so it's a chthonic thing, right? It's an earth. It's a Capricornian type thing, when the soil is getting replenished, or, a lot of people think the earth is dead, but that snow is actually like adding nitrates and all kinds of cool shit that will help the soil come spring. And just to back it up a little bit, we had broached the subject of corn, meaning seed. That's why Capricorn is named such. Corn means seed back then. It wasn't a word for maize, like the modern corn on the cob that we eat.
Do you think at the beginning, you think that might be like the Kabiri corn?
Oh, geez. Yeah, that's philologically the same word. And for those who don't know who the Kabiri are, those are like the titans of the Phoenicians. And some think they were real people. I don't think so, but it doesn't mean real people didn't call themselves after it, right? But if you look up Hill of Tara, that's a very important location where like a lot of the kings were coronated in Ireland. And there's like this like phallus-like stone that they would oil up and do whatever God knows what around there. I'm not going to contribute to anything that's not true. I suspect a lot of the stories about the Druids are told by religious people who wanted to make them look bad. And I think it's the same with the Phoenicians. But I think when you see all this stuff about sacrificing children, I don't really buy it. I could be wrong, but I just don't think people are going to be in a rush to sacrifice the most important parts of their future.
Man, I was reading Faber in The Origins of Pagan Idolatry, and the hoops that he was having to jump through mentally to come to grips with why the Hebrews of the Old Testament had the practice of oiling the linga. Like it's just sad to watch. Like these extremely religious types. He knows so many things that are useful to someone like us reading his book with all the details. But you just have to filter out all his conclusions because they're completely religious minded. And his whole thing is trying to figure out why is the pagan system identical to the Hebraic Mosaic system without it actually being the same system. He just so it's just really hard. It's like painful to watch because he's clearly intelligent, but some of these guys are the best in the world at what their niche is, like what they specifically do. They're the best in the world. You just have to realize that their conclusions are not going to be the best. You just gotta, you as the researcher, and I think what you just touched upon is establishing our values. Because we don't have that, we're able to look at everything in every tradition and let it take us somewhere, rather than we believe this already, so our findings must correlate to what we believe, But to continue, so we have this hill of Tara where you have the coronations and all that stuff. And then you have this bull god in Egypt called Hathor, which is basically, if you were to spell it out, it's just A or H-A-T-A, the bull. Right. And in
Horus.
In terms of what the Ha means, it's basically no different than the, so like one way you could, because there's so many versions of languages that are part of the system where the word the means is the same word as God. That's an example. D, right? Then basically Hathor would be God Thor. It's right there. And you're muted, but the hey or the ha, that letter hey means the in Hebrew.
And even in Italian, il, right? Il is the. You see this in like Ibrahim.
Or Spanish El. And we know El is a title of God. Perfect. Yeah.
Boom. It all shows up. And to your point, you just made me realize that Hathor, right? It's H-A is also Yah. So it's like what would look like iota, eta. Sorry, I'm doing Greek. Yod, Hey in Hebrew. These literally, for those who see us get confused sometimes, they're all the same system. You just have to remember the different names and stuff of the letters. But once you grasp it, you're looking at the same thing. So you don't actually have to know the names of any of the letters or anything once you know the system. It's really, you can learn this system without even knowing a damn thing about any of the languages. That's the wild part about it.
And then when you see words in those languages, at least that pertain to mythology or religion, you know what the word means, even though you don't speak that language. Or you see through it as a name and read what the name actually is telling you as like a compound word. And that's what makes it fun. It's like putting on the They Live glasses.
Dude, it really is. That is the Matrix. Like when you really see it, you're like, oh, there's a whole nother level of communication you can have with people just by agreeing on what certain symbols mean. So even though it means one thing in one culture, you don't actually have to go by that. You can redress it. The reason I don't like redressing it for the purposes of what we're doing is we're actually trying to get to the bottom of a historical matter. So it's not useful to us to look at modern occultism because modern occultism has switched everything up on us. I'm not saying modern occultism isn't cool and I'm not interested in it. I'm just saying if I want to figure out the origins and what cultures are responsible, I can't get caught up in the modern stuff.
Well, one thing that's modern that we may be projecting on the past is our system of categorization of parts of speech. What I mean by that is when we're talking about names that people just see blindly as a name, but we are able to see what it actually is telling you as words, as adjectives or titles or whatever. It's interesting because there's no such thing as a noun in nature, like person, place, or thing. That's what a noun is. And we see these things, modern people see these things as a noun in a sense, but we see it as the action that it implies. The reality behind the noun is in its descriptive power or its active sense. And that's what that's the They Live glasses is getting past the whole noun. And that maybe is why so many places and people have names that are part of this system. Like every river, every city, every king has a name that's basically like part of this mythology in terms of what it's describing. Maybe at a certain point in the past, they didn't really have this separation into the concept of nouns as we do now. And so they tried to, what they called things was based more on its active principle or a descriptive factor rather than like, these are the combination of sounds that mean me. I think about that a lot. Like the way that you often go by the moniker Great Tide, because that's what Dylan means, or my name is also a word. So it's very interesting because like that is the matrix in terms of even the legal system. The black magic of the legal system is people identifying with legal fictions, and nouns are the ultimate fiction in a way.
And when you add the numerological value between, you're basically getting a story in a name. You're getting a process. Yeah, it's like that is the significance of choosing a proper name, and that's why you might spell it one way versus another way if you're consciously doing it. But sometimes you're unconsciously doing it because back then there's no reference. You had to learn a system, right? But sometimes that system was just phonetically sounding out stuff and spelling it that way rather than knowing like a universal, this is how you spell this word. It's universally accepted. Well, back then, I don't think you were allowed to even leave this system behind when you went there because that would give it away, which would be, if you look at any of the systems we've had in the modern times, when you break those types of rules, you die. That's how they preserve it. Like when the laws are strict and rigid in these cultures for a reason, because that's how you get that fear of consequences being that extreme is the only way that gets even the most powerful people to behave the right way in the framework of our empire. Because if you allow them to break the rules or do what they want to do, then everybody goes their own way and it turns into like a King of the Hill slugfest where it's just chaos, right? So you get caught leaving this stuff behind, you probably die. I don't think you were allowed to be like, you get caught, showing your hooker or whatever, these broads you're going from place to place and hooking up with, you get caught pillow talk or any of that stuff, you would probably die. Like I don't, just judging by the way this system has worked all the way up into the modern era, like the 20th, 21st century. I don't think you're giving away secrets like that. When you take these oaths, it's like all business.
It's mafia.
It is, like a lot of people think about the mafia, but that comes from people who come from this system, and it's not bad. You like, if you don't break the rules, nothing bad happens to you. So it's not like an element of, it's kind of like soldiers. When you're overseas, if someone fires on you, you have a what is it called? The rules of engagement. And once these rules of engagement are broken, you have to, if somebody gives you an order to kill somebody, like your commanding officer, you have to do it. If you disregard that order, you could get court-martialed and who knows what would happen, right? So it's the same way with these systems. Even if somebody likes you, especially with Cosa Nostra, like the people, when you got offed, it was usually your best friend leading you into the room and you didn't know about it, and they had the meetings in these places regularly. So most of the time it was fine, but some of the time you're walking into that basement or whatever. And
Cosa Nostra is the U.S. mafia, right?
Well, it's from Sicily, but yeah, it means our thing. And sometimes like with that C interchange, you'll see like Cosa Nostra. People say like a G, like, how that deli meat, gabagool, but it's spelled with C's. So sometimes you'll see like that pronunciation still used by Italians where we don't say the C's. So it's kind of like an indication of their antiquity or their connection to the antiquity. But yeah, so Cosa Nostra is basically the life in Italy that came from Sicily to America. And you didn't know about it. Like if people were in it, it wasn't like Hollywood where like, John Gotti brought it all down because he was really flashy. But we don't want to get into that because we don't want to get, weird people on our case. But ironically,
I'm going to try to let you take us through a lot more of this without off subject interruptions, but because I was looking at how many notes you have, we may have a couple
We may have
shows
2
on our
shows.
hands here.
Yeah. There's no pressure.
Looking good.
Ironically, just for, so you've heard of Cosa Nostra. So his grandson-in-law was the private personal chef for Raymond Patriarcha, who is the head of the,
your ancestor that's on the cover of the book.
Yeah. Yeah. So his son-in-law, his grandson-in-law. So it's my grandmother's sister's husband. So she was Auntie Anna to me. She was like my grandmother up here up in New England because my grandmother lived in Florida. So her husband was, I don't know if he got into debt with them or if Raymond gave him the money to open up a restaurant. So Raymond was the head of the New England mafia. So he was like friends with, like, he would do a lot of the mediation between like the families when they were in New York, when they would get in fights. So they were like friends with like the Gambinos and all those people. But just to see how this life is all connected, the point that I was trying to make though is this society, you take oaths, you take blood oaths. They cut you open. I don't think it's that bad for the mafia. I think you would just prick your finger, wipe your blood on the image of a saint, and then burn it. And you take your oath, and if you break your oath, your soul burns in hell for eternity or some shit like that. It's like not that crazy, but I think all of this comes from like a lot of the Jesuit order and then the stuff prior to that. Like they were very serious about this system. It wasn't casual like we're doing it today. So that's just something to be mindful of. And that's why there aren't letters in Ireland in these places, because the Druids were secret about it. But
even the Latin word for letters is just one letter off, or a alternate pronunciation for the Latin word for secret. Lateo is secret.
Yep. And isn't that where the Church of
Latter-day Saints?
Yeah.
Saints.
I didn't even think about that. That's definitely like encoding that. Oh my God. I never thought of that. That's freaky. That's the type of shit that'll give you goosebumps, because for anyone who knows anything about that culture, there's a lot of Freemasonry encoded in a lot of their rituals and stuff when they get married and all that stuff with handshakes. They got to go, one of them's behind the veil. It's wild. It's wild. But
I've tuned some people who came from Mormon cults. They get a number done on them.
Yeah, it's intense. There's like good things about it, and then it's like anything, but that's the life they were born into, and some people are just born into the life. That's why I don't ever focus on anybody, because you can't help what family you come from. And so if you're born and your dad's a fucking gangster and now you're a gangster, you wouldn't have been in that life if you weren't brought into it. I'm lucky because that family that I descend from that's connected to this stuff, that's on my maternal grandmother's side. So her father, Buster Caesar, right? How's that? His name's Bastilino, but everyone called him Buster. He's the one that married into the Fortini family.
It's basically like Bastion, a fortress.
Yeah, exactly. So isn't that funny? He married into someone with the last name Fort, or their name means the brave or the strong. He had 2 daughters. So if he was connected to the life, and he probably was, because he was wealthy, and I think a lot of people in that family made their money with like the gambling and stuff. But even if you weren't like a made man or straightened out or anything like that, you had to still get permission. You wanted to do this business that these people controlled, you still had to get their blessing to do it and kick them back money, So what the point is this is all patriarchal. So because he had 2 daughters, that's what I come from. So her children are out. Women ain't going to know anything about this system in the life, right? Back then anyway. And so now, speaking of women and the prominence of this, I think it's a great time. I think this is where your audience will really appreciate the tarot symbolism with the ansated codes of the goddess Tanit. And we've shown this before. And you'll see on the right is the caduceus, actually. It doesn't look like it, but the way it's looked at, it is like a bull's head in a way. And so if you want, the very next slides, you can show people how this symbolism is tying into it. And it's not coincidence on both the tarot decks that you guys often use.
And just to recap, in case it went by too quick or we didn't flesh it out, there is the NR letter interchange. So Tanit could very well be Tarit.
made every connection but that. That totally went over. I totally missed that. It's like you're looking in the distance and it's like right here, so you don't see it.
That's the thing, man. Things become invisible by their proximity. That's why it takes a lot of people looking together.
And so what you'll see on her head, that's the exact symbolism. And you could say that's anecdotal. But look at in her hand, Torah. And she's got the Tau cross, the Terminus cross.
Yeah, man. There's a lot of symbolism in the tarot cards. That could be its own episode, but I'd never made the connection to, I'm going to go back to the other image, Tanit. And look, see, this is the headgear. And another thing to consider is the shape of this going back to what is said to be a crescent moon, but that is also secretly arc symbolism. Like this is also the arc. When you see this, it can mean both things.
And what could be higher than the high priest, like the archon priestess.
Right.
And so you'll see this one body language, and look at what she's sitting on. It's that ansated cone, like the way she's depicted from the waist down. That's that triangle. And if it weren't any clearer, on her lap is a bow. So that right there is tying.
What's a bow called in Latin, Dylan? Arcus.
No, it's not.
It is. I swear to God.
And also, isn't a citadel arx, ARX or something like that? My God.
Yeah, it is. It's Archis.
What is going on? We stumbled on this. We like kicked a beehive.
It's a gravy portal.
But you'll see,
gravy portal.
You'll see, like she's got it with her arms, but then she also has it on her head in this one too, in the Thoth deck. So
yeah, and you're right. It's also arcs, like ARX or ARCIS. That's crazy.
That's crazy. I didn't know that was bow too. That's
arc.
BOW, like that you shoot a bow.
Like what's on her lap? See the bow on her lap?
Yeah. Yeah, that's incredible. I didn't know that.
Well, and I think that her son is arrows shoot from a bow.
Oh man, it's all there. It's all crazy. You can see how like people would name words after these archetypes in future generations. It's just all there. And where the next slide you'll see is of without an inscription, you don't really know. But it looks like Inanna or Astarte. And she's standing in between two goats. I don't know if you can see that. But
yeah, they're a little faint, but you can make them out.
And you can see that same bent arm symbolism and like that you would see with the ansated cones of Tanit. And we just showed you one. If you actually pull that thread further, if you just look that up online, you'll come across all kinds of stelae that have that depicted on it in Carthage, Sicily, etc. And then the next two, you can actually show in the article so people can see. You don't need to click the images side by side, like individually, because I think when you see it side by side, this really brings home the Davidet or Taut symbolism, which is that like hippopotamus looking archetype in Egypt. She's also known as the Queen of Heaven, the mistress of the horizon. And whether that symbolizes the sun or the moon, I don't think that's important. I think what it's indicating is when those bodies are near the horizon, that's the image you see. And it's indicating that goddess of boundaries, just like Terminus.
Wow. I've never looked at that symbol as the sun walking on water, but that's totally there. Whoa.
This could be anecdotal. When I see the sailors and the mariners, if you will, using this, and the reason I wanted to bring up the Tauret or Davidet, there's so many ways people pronounce this. But
basically you could, that's also Devaret. Deva.
Yeah. Yes, it is. Yep. Yep. Boom. It's all there. And that other way of writing it is basically the bull with the letter T representing the boundary, representing Terminus, the god of boundaries. I'm not making this up, this
interesting that her name, or that Tauret, she's hard to say. She's the hippopotamus head. And what does hippopotamus mean? It literally that word means water horse. And we know that the symbolism of horses and boats blend together in the system.
Called it camp. That horse, you ever seen that? The horse with the front half of the body, but then it's got a tail like a dolphin or something.
Okay, maybe not, but in terms of
that's worth it.
In terms of the boundaries, thing that you're talking about. That, that's what the water horse or the boat is, the one that crosses the boundaries of the sea. So maybe that's part of why the hippopotamus head is there, or that just maybe a synchronistic connection, but super interesting.
Well, in Egypt, I don't think they had horses, right? So like on the Nile, you're seeing that function is served by the hippopotamus, right? The horse is in the water, essentially. And
good point.
Those are Greek words. So I think, but if you have the means to look up Hippocamp, I think it's very worth your time, because this is important. You'll see this. I would have shared this. There's actually still, there's a stele of the Tanit symbol with the hippocamp and these telkine type dolphins underneath it. But anyways, I'll keep talking, because Astarte is a Phoenician. Yeah, there it is. Look at that, dude. You've seen those before, right? You're on mute, just so you know.
Fish-tailed horses, hippocamp, right on. Yeah, I didn't know I hadn't really put a lot of thought towards that. It's not something you see a lot of, or maybe I just haven't.
Oh, but when you start looking at these ancient sites, you will see it on pottery, and you always see it with like these waves. And I mean, it's such a obvious example of cultural diffusion between like the Greeks, the Phoenicians, whoever all this is. You can tell that at one point before the nations are started, they're all very connected. Now,
Triton, the triple dawn, the triple lord, Triton.
Yeah. Oh man. That almost went over my head, but Ton, Ton is Don, which is Lord Adonis.
Boom.
So
yeah, that's a good tangent.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. Well, that's why I wanted to bring this on to you, because I know you're going to have insight. Now, if you want to scroll just a little bit further down, you don't have to click on them, but that's the proof. That's the proof is in the pudding, right? Or the proof of the pudding is in the eating of it. You're seeing Astar in Irish. That's an Irish dictionary, meaning journey, and Te, meaning a person. So a person on a journey, and that symbol, if we'll get to it in a minute, but that symbol is like, it's signifying basically the protection of people. They would put it on everything. Protection. Now you could say that means protection on a journey for the navigators. You could say protection, or just somebody signifying we took a journey to a warm region. Or you could make the case that it's the sun, and you could pull out the etymology that it means hot journey of the sun, because Te has a couple different meanings. That's all conjecture. But what you'll see in the next slide is Inanna, allegedly Inanna, but without inscription, it's hard to tell. But she's got these signets on each of her hand, which are Shen symbols. And Shen in Albanian means saint, but it's called the Shen symbols, Shen. That's what you'd see. And she's got the horns, which is hornism, which signifies the sun and that radiance. She's standing on lions. It's on each side of her has got the owls of wisdom of Minerva. And that's important because we're going to get into Britannia. But first, I just want to show you one more picture. If you go at the following image is a bust of Tanit, and she's got that thing on top of her head like Diana or Hecate Trisformis. Now, her name is spelled TNT in Punic.
Coming up in part 2 of this episode, dude, something I just realized.
Hit it.
TNT in the Greek powers of notation, that's 650, the Neros.
That is a way of dating some of this stuff that average archaeologists wouldn't know if they've never been initiated into the priestess system. This isn't stuff you're going to find on the internet. Dated a woman that was related, we'll just say, to the Stuart line, Princess Diana, Winston Churchill, and you go far back enough and the Stuart line comes from the Orsini family.
Damn, the crown called a tiara. Tiara has got the Thor in it as well. It's super interesting.
And you'll see that it is actually written on the caduceus, and it means savior in fucking Cornish. It's the same word.
The logo for the Hunger Games much? The bird in the Hunger Games is called a mockingjay. Yinx was the daughter of Pan and Echo, and mockingjays echo. They repeat what others say.
It's really hard to argue that this isn't intentional.
Now think about the Pleiades, which is in what constellation is the Pleiades in, Dylan?
The bull.
Taurus, the bull, exactly. The constellation of the doves. It all circles back. This is one of the most valuable podcasts anybody ever did anytime.